This is Ancient Political Philosophy, Friday, November 20th, 2020. This is my last recorded lecture. We'll be summarizing Cicero's presentation of peripatetic philosophy, Platonic or academic philosophy, Platonic and Aristotelian philosophy in Book 5. And I'll make some summary comments about the course and its purpose in life. And remember that the PRQs for Cicero are not due until Tuesday, November 24th at 6:30 p.m. So I just want to begin with two quotes, and then I'll just make some commentaries on these. On page 121 in Book 5, the third division of philosophy is concerned with rules for living well, and here the peripatetics were interested not only in the organization of one's private life, but in the good conduct of public affairs as well. The traditions, institutions, and systems of every state, Greek and non-Greek, we can discover from Aristotle and their laws from Theophrastus. Both philosophers laid down the suitable qualifications for a political leader, and both wrote often on the question of the best form of the Constitution. So Cicero is echoing the essentially political character of human beings. As you'll see, I'll summarize this as his agreement with Aristotle, that human beings are the political animal. And on page 137, it seems to me this is the deepest statement of Ciceronianism and his agreement with Plato and certainly Aristotle. It is evident then that we are born to act. There are many forms of activity, however, so much so that one may lose sight of the trivial amidst the more important ones. As to the most important in my view and that of the thinkers whose system I am discussing, these are the contemplation and study of the heavenly bodies and of the mysterious secrets of nature that rational thought has the power to uncover. The administration of public affairs, or perhaps the knowledge of its theory, and a way of thinking that displays practical reason, temperance, bravery, and justice, and which manifests the other virtues too, and the actions that flow from them. That's a pretty good single paragraph statement of the thrust of Socratic, Platonic, and Aristotelian thought. And in summary, I would say that in this book, Cicero is giving an account of nature and human nature, virtue and virtuous action, and the role of reason, and that both essentially derives from Plato and Aristotle, the Academy, the academic philosophy, Plato's school, and the peripatetics of the Lyceum, referring to Aristotle's school. Through the mouth of Piso, in this last book, Cicero agrees with Plato and Aristotle that man is the political animal. Again, in Book 4, page 110, that we looked at in the last lecture, Cicero concludes his criticism of the Stoic system because it's, in some ways, it depoliticizes humanity. And that is our natural condition, is the polis. So any comprehensive... So by the way, in the last passage that on page 110, human beings are the acting animal. We have the essence of our life on earth, while we have philosophic curiosity and perhaps even a desire to know what happens after death and all kinds of things that end up religious and theological urges. But you'd have to say that our thrust in this life is action. And Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and Cicero all converge on the idea that the aim of philosophic reflection is to allow human beings to live a more human life. As Socrates says in the Apology, Hodo anaxetotos bios ou biotos anthropou estin. For the unexamined life is not living for a human being. But it's not, again, nasal gazing. It's looking at the natural grounds of human life and the natural order of the cosmos, but then understanding how that vision of the universe, which is reflected in the construction of our own souls, that vision, while it is satisfying in terms of contemplation and is somehow the key to understanding the nature of the world around us, it has to have a practical dimension. the intellectual virtues for Aristotle in the Ethics aren't just contemplation and wisdom, it's prudence, practical judgment, the right thing at the right time for the right reasons in the right amount. That's actually a lot harder than it seems. And you could be forgiven. I should say you could see the impatience of the revealed religious traditions with philosophers for suggesting that the very complex task of deciding what to do in life, of acting and deliberating, that perhaps the human mind is not quite up to the task of rendering the grounds of our identity and therefore the grounds of our action, coherent moral action, that the human mind really can't do this, and that the philosophic enterprise that we've examined in this course is better left to a being who has a far more comprehensive and deep grasp of the human condition than we ourselves do, and that's, of course, God. So you can understand why the divine traditions would say to this philosophic tradition that we've examined, you take on too much. You think that human beings can understand the world. You think that human beings can understand themselves. You think that human beings can understand their collective and individual lives. That is exactly what Aristotle and Plato believed that human beings are capable of doing. And so you'd have to say that, yes, with the Stoics, Cicero and Plato and Aristotle and Socrates agree that man is the rational animal. But not just the thinking animal. He's the acting animal. And it's in that necessity providing the grounds for action that the political character of this view of human life is established. Any account of human life for Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero has to address the political. It has to provide sufficient guidance and motivation to understand and restrain evil in the world and pursue the good through action. So Cicero concludes pagan antiquity's reflection of human beings, reflection upon human beings, and the human condition, with the same affirmations as Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and Aristotle. Politics is at our core, the core of the human condition. The meditation on the human, the political, is the beginning of understanding ourselves and our universe. And human happiness and dignity derive from our rational, political, and speaking natures. So, some concluding remarks regarding ancient political philosophy. In a world of Nazism and fascism, as we saw revealed in Nazi Germany or the Italian fascism or the different fascisms that exist around the world, Venezuela, Argentina, the different Marxist ideologies that populate the world, the People's Republic, Republic of North Korea, and Cuba, and some other residues. You know, you could say that the political possibilities that modernity has revealed to us have been these tyrannies of the right and left. And even you could say one of the things that we've been dealing with in the Western world is a resurgence of religious tyranny. ISIS, I mean, after all, celebrated the resurrection of the caliphate by beheading the heads of children who had would refuse to accept the Quran. So it's not as if modernity, both in pre-modern terms, has spanned visions of politics which could tyrannize millions, billions, if not the entirety of the human race. Again, you could say that as we are standing in the first third of the 21st century, what are the alternatives for the masses of humanity? Again, I've raised several times, and looking at 1984, but I've mentioned several times Brave New World. When you combine the materialism, which, by the way, starts to sound very much like Epicureanism, the materialism and the scientific understanding of the universe, which has no natural ends or purposes, and yet you also say that human beings should be absolutely equal in their enjoyment of all aspects of life, and they should be absolutely free to create themselves like gods. where the triple thrust of modern political philosophy, uh, an embrace of a materialistic and reductionist nature in which human dignity and freedom evaporate in scientific causality, and yet an embrace of a human world in which politics is reduced to administering the goods of life, feeding the cows, so to speak, and at the same time in which there's absolute liberty to indulge yourself in whatever pleasures you design for your life. The alternatives seem to be different kinds of tyranny or the kind of strange, defective way of life that we've managed to create in this constitutional republic of the United States. But when we look at our own society, which is beset with all kinds of pathologies that seem to be spiritual or philosophic in nature, you have to wonder whether or not that even our way of life, which might be preferable to scientific tyranny under the world state, as in Brave New World, or the ideological, technological foot of Big Brother in 1984, or any of the alternatives, even our own that modernity has coughed up, can they govern humanity in freedom and dignity and constitutional rule? It seems to me that the modern thinkers, who are the foundation, who perform the conceptual basis of modern politics in the modern world, it seems to me that the thought of the authors we just have examined aren't simply a form of ancient curiosity, as if, by the way, we just happened to stroll into a museum in downtown Athens or Rome to see how they did things 3,000 years ago. This wasn't an exercise in antiquarian curiosity. This is part of the search for the truth that the liberal arts is supposed to engender as a community, and one hopes, through professorial guidance, that you are encouraged to take up as part of your own lives, the search for the truth. And so, in some ways, in a world that I've described, does reading Socrates or his students Plato or Xenophon, or Plato or Aristotle or Cicero, do they add to our understandings of the human condition? They certainly point to a different understanding of the human condition, that we are inclined by our living in the cave, to use Plato's image from Book 7 of the Republic. Our cave is the modern cave. Almost all the imaginations that we see as human happiness come from the presumptions of philosophy and political philosophy that the moderns initiated, beginning with Machiavelli in the 1500s, and developed to the point where you have the different politics of modernity. So I have to say, I think it's at least a legitimate question. Might not a Socrates, a Plato, an Aristotle, a Cicero be still relevant in the extent to which they may make us or enable us to see complexities and aspects of our nature and the cosmos that get obscured in the way of life and the way of thinking that we have adopted? Perhaps to chart the human future, we have to recover our philosophic past.